Hey, glad to be here. But guys and gals, if you're listening to this, go do Jeffrey a favor. Go over and hit the subscribe button and leave him a 5-star review. He's doing a great job.
Wow.
And we as podcasters love getting reviews from our listeners, good or bad. We just want to hear feedback. And if you could do that, if you've listened, spent the last 30 minutes or listened who's been binging his shows, take the 5 minutes to do that for Jeffrey. He would really appreciate it.
Hey guys, so welcome to the 6th episode, season 3 of the Teen Whisperer Show, where you get to hear the stories and experiences of podcasters and what are the problems that they are facing and how to overcome it. Today, we have with ourselves the Note Guy, which is really a catchy name, and I will be sure to ask why he has something like that. I welcome Mr. Scott Carson to the show. He's an entrepreneur, investor, syndicated radio and podcast host, sports fanatic, marketer, and speaker. I actually, took that from his Facebook bio, and it's really a big list. So thank you, Scott, for coming out to the show. So please tell a little bit about yourself and your podcasting career.
I'm so honored to be here today, and so honored to give to your show and your audience out there. Yeah, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, primarily focused in the real estate space. Been a marketer since 2004, 2005. Really embraced the social media side and videos aspect of things, and I think that's really if you're not marketing your business, you're really struggling behind, because whether you're in real estate or podcasting or whatever it might be, taxi cab driver or selling something, we're all in the media business these days with the way that video has gotten so much easier with cell phones being where they're at. So I've embraced that over the last 10 years and started podcasting roughly 3 years ago. And my podcast is focused on my primary business model of buying distressed debt here in the state and investing in that niche. It's a very small niche inside a much larger field of real estate investing or real estate aspect of things. So really, they say the riches are in the niches. I've built a notoriety for myself for the last 10 years being an active note investor and educator in the industry, and that's where I came across. I didn't come up with myself the Note Guy, and that's from me traveling so much and going and speaking at different events. And right off the bat, like, people would come up to me, "Hey, aren't you that Note Guy that I see on YouTube?" And so that's what kind of stuck. I called the Note Guy in 4 different investment clubs in 4 different nights and 4 different time zones. So I was like, I think that's something we'll use. Okay?
Yeah, I think that's a really good nickname, because coming from all over the world, I think it's pretty much suits you. I think so. Wow, that's really good. And I've seen that you released actually over 600 episodes around in your podcast. So what do you think that actually makes a podcast host really good? What are the skills that actually required? Because sometimes people will say that you actually really good English knowledge, and they need to know how to show the benefit to the guest. And also, what are the things that you think made you a really good podcast host?
Well, I would say more than anything else, and you look at the amount of podcasts out there, there have been over 1 million shows, but only roughly a third of them are active. Consistency is one of the most important things, showing up on a regular basis. When I started a podcast, I didn't know if I'd get to 100 episodes or 1,000 episodes. And the fact that we show up every day, I mean, we do 3 to 5 episodes a week with our show. It's just there's 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. It's a mixture of me teaching to my audience or bringing on guest experts or vendors or other investors in my field. So it's a matter of just showing up and being consistent, staying true to that. Secondly, I think what also helps is I'm not trying to be everywhere. Yeah. I'm very niche focused. So I know a lot about one subject, and that's the audience that I'm looking for. It may not be 1 million listeners. It may be there may be truly only an audience of maybe 20 to 50,000 people in our little niche of real estate investing. And so I do a deep dive on that. I don't try to be 3 or 4 things. My audience, when they come listen to my show, they know they're going to learn something that's going to help them in their real estate or note investing space. And so that's, I would say, so if you say consistent, niche down, try not to do everything, and then just be yourself. Yeah. That's one of the most important things. I think a lot of people, we get into comparanoia. Everybody wants to be Joe Rogan or Ron Burgundy or somebody else out there. When you think about that, don't be that. God made you for who you are, and then He wants to hear what you have. Whether you're talking about cats or marketing or podcasting or real estate or self-help or comic books, whatever your passion is, that's okay. Embrace your passion. It works well makes it a lot easier if you're podcasting about something that you're interested in or you have a career in.
Mm-hmm.
That helps as well too for you. But just showing up. I mean, I've gotten much better as an interviewer and also as a guest. The more time I've been on over 200 other podcasts as well too as a guest. And it's just the fact that we focused on that roughly 2 years ago. Like, oh, we saw the power in this medium and being able to be in front of their audiences and growing our audience. So that's why we said, well, let's double down on what we're doing. And thank God we did with everything happened with the pandemic. We're still cranking out episodes and still having the show grow quite a bit as it is.
Wow. I mean, you said that you were actually, interviewing experts when you're coming into your podcast. So I'm actually literally a podcaster and I do, of course, other, side hustle and stuff. So when you're actually interviewing your, target audience, like if you're like real estate, if you're, interviewing another real estate guy or someone who's actually related to niche, who you can actually, pitch your, business to. So if you're doing that, how not to actually be a sales guy? Because when we are podcasting, we obviously think that we can convert that particular guest into a potential client. If that's the possible case, like how not be so salesy when like, yeah, I do this. If you say this again and again, obviously people think that he's not providing value, just trying to pitch you. So how not to be salesy and, provide value first, then get the client.
That's a really good, I'm glad you asked that because I've dealt with that speaking at universities and talking with students and having college students working for me in the past and things like that. And the way I always tell people is don't be afraid to give. A lot of people out there, they want to get something. They want to sell something before they give. And I'm the opposite. Let's give some content. Let's give something of value. And then people that go, whoa, wow, if he or she gave this away for free, their paid stuff must be pretty good.
Yeah.
And so as a podcaster, you want to create something that is going to be valuable to your audience so that if you are guesting on somebody's show, it's something valuable. Maybe it's a free report. Maybe it's a free book that you can ship them or download, a discount code to a class, or you have an online class or something that's evergreen that you can give away for free. And that would be the thing. It's really creating a lead magnet. Sometimes it's just simply like, hey, if you want to talk with me, go to talkwithscottcarson.com and opt in. I'll be glad to schedule a 30-minute phone call with you for free. Or hey, if you go to Mass Media Mastermind, you can download my free 2-page monetization checklist for you at no additional cost. Or, go to noteblueprint.com, free book, and get a copy of my book, my 73-page book sent to you for free. So the idea here is if you come across trying to sell on a podcast, it will push people away.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a big believer. I mean, we all need to make money to pay for our podcast. And I think you can start inserting ads or sponsors. If you're trying to sell your stuff, and that's what we do mostly with what our podcast is. It's primarily our classes, our workshops, our training. We do have people that we bring in quarterly. But I think for new podcasters, if you're going to try to bring other sponsors on or sell something that's not you, you really probably need to be at that 100 episode mark. So your audience trusts you. To the point where you're like, hey, I recommend using rentameter.com. It's a great service that I use. They're going to take it and go click on it. Whereas if you're recommending somebody or something that you don't use and you're just trying to get a kickback or a split, people will be able to tell that quite a bit if you don't use it personally. So give some more and realize that this is a long-term play. If you want to, plant an orange tree, you've got to plant it and give it some time to grow. It's not going to start growing oranges overnight for you. You got to give it a little bit of time to plant that seed. I think it was a story a few years ago in some part of India. A guy for the last 30 years has been planting a tree. For over 30 years. He was originally on a sandbar. It was desolate. And he started planting a tree. And now that was back in 1978. He started planting trees. Well, now that same sandbar with all the work that he's done in planting trees on a daily basis when he came home from work is now this beautiful jungle forest. Wow. And that's a lot of marketing. It's kind of a great analogy. We've got to plant seedlings and we'll give it time to grow. Give it time to harvest. It's not a get rich or quickly sell thing. Your audience and people that listen to your podcast want to know you're going to be around longer than 10 or 20 episodes.
Yeah,
So,
I think people's like actually. Sorry for the interruption, and
no, no.
I just, I think people actually get this misdirection of giving value, because mostly when people say that you give value, they actually, the first thing that come to your mind is that what happens to the cost. Like if I give value, like if you're selling that, giving free copies of your book, then there's some cost you obviously incur. The value doesn't necessarily mean that it should convert right away. It may that you get back somewhat around that. So what do you want to tell to those people about who thinks about the cost first when it comes to value?
That's a really good question, and a lot of people struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is kind of build you a funnel of sales things along the way, and realize it's going to take some time. Like a lead magnet, maybe a free report or something you can create relatively easily. A checklist is very hot these days. Hey, get a copy of my tech that I use for my podcast, or my top 12 websites that I use for due diligence, or something that doesn't cost you hardly anything, but it's valuable to somebody that's brand new. Maybe it's $0, maybe it's $1. I think I like $1 because if you get somebody to spend $1 with you, it's much easier for them to spend something more versus, as we call people that opt into everything for free, those are price pigs, and they don't convert for the most part. So I would rather talk to 10 people that paid me $1 versus 100 people that didn't pay me anything. It's going to be much more valuable because somebody's going to be invested. So $1, 97 cents, whatever, but have that dollar lead to something's valuable. Then it leads to maybe a $97 product or a $49 product or a $29 online event for a day or something like that. And kind of structure. And then you have it go to maybe a $3.99 course or a product or service, and then maybe even a bigger event or even some coaching or consulting. That's kind of what we do. We have a product anywhere from $1, kind of builds all the way down to our coaching program at 10 to 15 grand. And you got to give people time and consistency. And that's part of what has helped with the podcast episodes is people are binging our episodes and realizing, okay, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. He's hanging with the right people. Great. Now, if you're starting off and you don't know where to begin, maybe you're brand new to whatever your niche is, do a search for the people that you look up to, your peers, the people that are in the industry, and then bring them together on an online event, for a day or 2 days. Now your credibility level will go up to those that you're bringing together. Hopefully they'll market some of their audience. If you're marketing the event too, as well as you should be, you shouldn't rely on anybody that you're speaking on to market it, but realize that now you're starting to raise your credibility level to those that you look up to. And that helps you out. That adds value to your message. That adds value to your audience as well.
Yeah, and you guys were actually driving traffic from your podcast or your videos to your business. So this is something that's really interesting because most of the time people listen to podcasts when they're commuting or when they're at a gym and something like that. But what do you think is actually the best business model in order to drive those particular traffic? Using funnels, like you said, and if your target audience is someone who's always listening commuting, obviously they will hear the most important stuff. And if there's a promotional coming, they obviously look at the traffic and they will just drive the show. So what do you think is actually best business model in order to drive the traffic to your business?
There's no right answer to this except you have to know your audience. You have to know your avatar. Like with what I do, I have an older avatar, an older age listener. So my primary audience is usually 45 to 65 because in real estate, you got to have some money to invest. You got some experience for a lot of times. So they're not big podcast listeners. Okay. So you have to market wherever your listeners is at. Now, when we look at the demographics and the numbers for podcasting, I'm not sure what it is in India as far as a percentage. It may be higher, it may be lower. But here in the United States, it's only about 26% of the population listens to podcasts. Yeah. So if all I did was post it to iTunes and Stitcher and then the other podcasting platforms, I would still be missing out on roughly 3/4 of Americans.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of not only the audio, but the video side of things. You got to share your video, got to record it like you're recording here, and throw it on YouTube and learn how YouTube works, because YouTube's a great search engine and it's owned by Google, the #1 search engine. If you look at the top 100 websites that people visit all across the world, only one of them in the top 100 is really audio, and that's Spotify. Apple iTunes is not in the top 100, but Facebook is. Google, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn is a big thing.
Yeah.
So you want to share your show not only on the audio platforms, but also the other platforms out there, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Instagram is great for a lot of podcasters, but it's a younger audience. That's actually my least favorite place to market. I mean, we do it with show infographics and things like that, but we get the least amount of traffic off of our Instagram account. We get the most, actually, surprisingly, from our YouTube videos. Our second traffic spot is our website, because we take the episodes and full transcribed blogs. So the search engine optimization has helped us rank from 75 keywords to over 2,000 or 2,500 keywords now. You got 600 blogs down there. That's a pretty good piece of work down there to drive traffic. And then, so third thing is, after our website is, iTunes, and Stitcher and stuff like that. That was kind of an eye-opening thing for me. But like I said, know what your listener is, know the demographics of your listener, and then pick the social platforms that they're hanging out. If they're young and 18 and are on TikTok, then be on TikTok. If your show is on gaming, then you need to live stream it to Twitch as well. But if you're, my audience really isn't on TikTok, so you don't see me dancing like a dancing machine on there at night. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting, because you said that, after 45 and 60, your audience is not there on TikTok. But in my country, people who are even above 80 years is on TikTok dancing. Okay, because if I could, get the video, I'd definitely send you the link, because it's really mind-blogging when how TikTok actually works. Because people, it's the one advantage is that it took them out of their comfort zone and get them recognition. But the other part is that most of them actually are doing it because they couldn't get any recognition at home. Because many people, like housewives, they are like underestimated, and they are doing that, and they get a lot of recognition online. Obviously, some bad stuff's going to happen, and it's really bad, but still some good are coming out of it. So go ahead. You're saying something.
I'll just say that social gratification, that dopamine release in your brain, whether it's somebody liking your post or, we as a society these days, and how social media has changed the way our brains are routed. You comment somebody, or you're sending a text to somebody, you can see them typing, but they don't respond. Why didn't they respond to my text immediately? Why did they like my post? What's wrong with it? It's just it's really rewritten the electronic signals in our brains. Or sometimes it's just the best thing to log off, and especially with all the negativity out there on social media and stuff like that, the haters. I mean, we could have 150 people like a post, but it's that one person that's going to hate it that's we're going to fixate on. Just a sad thing.
Yeah, it's really going to, really bad these days. And two observations from, what I said in previous. So you said that 26% of listeners were coming off podcasting in US. So what do you actually think is the future of podcasting after exactly this, pandemic? Because, podcast listeners obviously reduced because they are not traveling much. So what is your prediction? I mean, after 20 years of being on business and, 3 years of podcasting, what do you actually think that future of podcasting comes in?
That's a really great question. And as you look at the numbers year in, year out, more and more people are listening. That number is growing. What you have to realize is people are becoming more familiar with the platform. It's becoming a lot easier. I mean, we now have vehicles, automobiles that will have the podcasting app in there to listen to immediately. When you look at numbers like with what Joe Rogan just signed for $100 million over 3 years, that adds a lot of notoriety to it. When you look at a lot of these celebrities are getting into having a podcast these days from Hollywood, that leads to notoriety, stuff like that. But I don't think Hollywood, I don't think Joe Rogan, none of those people affect my business. What it comes down to is the same thing I said earlier. You have to market your own skills. Yeah. And so I talk with a lot of podcasters. They're like, what do I have to do to grow my show? I'm like, well, if you want to increase your downloads, double your downloads. If you're doing it like once a week, go to twice a week. Give more content. If you're wanting to attract more audience members, then share it on Facebook. Restream your episodes. Share it to LinkedIn. Go hunt out the people that you're in, or go hunt out the groups on Facebook or LinkedIn, or the keywords that you can follow on Twitter or Instagram, and literally reach out to people. And that's one of the things that we have done over the last 6 months. Is started spending more time tracking down people that identify. Like with us, a big keyword is real estate investor or note investor. So I will literally, and my team, and then we use a service called Octopus, that will track those people and actually send an invite. Hey, I'm wanting to connect with other real estate investors. We have that in common. I have a podcast. I think you might enjoy it. Here's a link to it. And we've seen that happen. But getting to the point where people aren't at the gyms like they were, they're not in the longer commutes, you got to get a little creative. I think those listeners will come back. You just need to make sure that you're on Facebook or YouTube where they can catch your information versus just being an audio podcast where they may not have the 2 hours of commute time or gym time. You got to be where they're at on their computers and be able to. I mean, you get YouTube on a smart TV these days.
Yeah.
Be there so people can catch your information.
Wow, that's totally good. And second observation is that you said that transcribing, so you transcribe into whole blog. So I'm actually really suffering from this, actually, my personal stuff. I mean, like, how do you actually transcribe it? I mean, what tools do you use? Because is it any like cheap way? Because what I actually do is there's something called Descript. It's actually free for 3 hours. So I actually do that. And second, I actually do is actually run the video, and there's a live transcribe from Google. It's a free app. I put the Bluetooth speaker on, then I will put my phone. It's just transcribe automatically, and it 80% it's accurate, and other than that, again, I have to listen and correct if there's anything. So what's the tool you use? Use there any cheap methods or anything like that?
Descript is a great tool. I'm going to be honest here. Most of my podcast production, I have a third-party service that does most of my editing for me, because it's my best term for me to pay somebody to do an episode and they do the full transcription. So they're using, there's a variety of great products. I've used Rev.com or Temi.com, which Temi is the AI version of Rev. Temi's 25 cents a minute, United States dollars. It's $1.25 for Rev per minute if you want something. You could use Otter AI is a service that gives you, I think, 4 hours every month. There's a bunch of more of those things. You can use if you upload your video to Facebook on a business page, it'll automatically put the captions in place there for you a lot of times. But you got to realize a lot of people will go short with just show notes, a little bit here and there, and that's okay. That's better than nothing. But if you can have the long written word, some people like to read, and it adds to that SEO optimization. So depending on how much you're doing, how many episodes or how hours, use some of those free tools as you can. You may need to cut and paste. It might make sense to even reach out to one of those companies and say, hey, I would love for you guys to be a sponsor of my podcast if you'll do my transcription for free.
Well, that's a great idea. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Well, and that's one. If you're wanting to add vendors or sponsors, we just reach out to the services that you use on a regular basis, talk about them, market them, and oftentimes they might be willing to do a swap for free. Something. Then you can say, hey, my podcast is sponsored by Rev.com.
Yeah,
you don't need to know that it isn't a dollar check. It's just that they're doing all the work for you and what it would cost you for free. And there's monetary value to that.
Yeah, that's really great. And what I was to do is that you were saying that upload to Facebook and create and captions. What I used to do is that I actually upload it to YouTube. So most of my listeners are from most of my listeners from foreign countries. So their English accent is really good, and the YouTube actually catches it really well. So it creates the caption, and I download the video, and there's a website called Downsub. I apply the link, and it downloads subtitles for me. So it's kind of creative that I found myself. So
good stuff. I love it.
So yeah, I think it's podcasting has really made me like kind of a creative guy. I think so. I'm really grateful for that.
It makes you a creative guy because you sure as heck don't want to do all that stuff on a regular basis, especially if you get busy with work or school or other things. Yeah. You want to stay in your most productive lane, what you're good at, and then try to delegate or outsource the rest if you can.
Yeah, I can totally agree on that. So just one question before, losing on to that. What do you think is actually the best tip that you can provide to a fellow podcaster in order to grow his podcast? The one best tip in the whole world that you can provide?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Listen. And I mean this in a funny way. If you won't have a specific thing, go and find other podcasts that are in your niche and listen to their shows and pick, I like that, or I don't like that. Okay. So listening to what you like, that's a great thing. Be different. And then the really most important thing, when you have a guest on, and you've done a great job of this, but really listen to what your guests are speaking about. There's a lot of time new podcasters will have a guest on and they end up talking over the guest versus just letting the guest talk. People are logging in. Yeah, they're want to listen to you, but if you get a guest, they want to listen to your special guest more so. And so that was one thing I had to learn to keep my mouth shut. The good Lord gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I need to listen in that proportion.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm glad I didn't do any mistake on that. That's something.
You've been great, Jeffrey. You've been awesome, man. You've been awesome.
Wow. That's totally great. So is there anything else you want to ask me?
I would love to what is it like to be a podcaster in India? I mean, what's the percentage of people they're listening to podcasts? What's the biggest surprise that you've gotten from your podcast? It's season 3, and so what's been the surprise that you've gotten in the previous 2 seasons? And this was episode 5 or 6 of season 3. What's been the biggest surprise to you from podcasting?
It's actually 2 things. One's uncertainty, and the next is surprise. Because you will never know that because in India, it's like, people will like worship like a god, for years and years. But if they find you something that you did something that's actually personally affected to them, kind of like an emotional stuff, then you're done. You're totally done. It's kind of like a really big thing here. So for me, season 2 was really great for photographers. I actually interviewed a lot of photographers, 10 people, and it actually got a really great audience and stuff. And then I got lots of track for my podcast. Then I kind of like remodeled something and I interviewed models, like fashion models, and it actually did really good. And then I started doing podcasters itself, because for me, just now in my South India, actually, the podcast is actually growing. Around like not 26% of Indians are listening to podcasts. Maybe it's still YouTube is actually really great going on here. And TikTok is like number 1 country where actually using the TikTok here. So it's going like crazy here. And so podcasts around like, I would say 10 to 15%. And mostly like national language of India is Hindi. So mostly people who are listening to podcasts are Hindi listeners. So in North India, people actually listen a lot. But in my side, sometimes it will like, go like, 300 plays or 400 plays, something like that. But all of a sudden it will be like no place. Even if you're expecting something like really good is going to happen, it won't. So it's kind of really, that's one of the reasons why many companies like McDonald's or, KFC, everyone, they come to India, they always face a struggle. You will never know what's about to happen in our country. People are unpredictable these days, in our country especially. So I think, I'm not over like explaining that our country is so big and all, but the consumer market is like that, as I've studied and seen the experience. So yeah, I think the podcasting here is actually one of the things that, and most of my listeners, 23 to 40, 35%, I think so, come from US. Like, because I actually, mostly interview foreigners, because it's kind of hard to get the people of my mindset in here, because, people online actually haven't explored a lot. I'm kind of like a crazy guy who actually want to find something new to do. So always that. So it's kind of hard. So yeah, I think that's one of the two things that I got from India.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing is keep doing it, because if you're in that early stage and you stick with it, as more people come into the space, more people discover it, I think you're going to see an increase in what you're doing. So if I can help in any form or fashion, I'm glad to refer. You let me know who you're trying to get on. I'm glad to refer people to you and help out in any way I can for you, Jeffrey.
Of course, man. Definitely, I will let you know. So, guys, in this podcast, we have discussed many things, like what is the best, business model for podcasting, and how to make a good, being a good podcast host, and what are the things skills that is required for a podcast host, and in real estate also we have talked some stuff. I will definitely put you on that. So if you are, guys, and if you're listening, I've given everything in the description. You can go and ask him. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in India or in this particular niche. General stuff is always, obviously, it's same for everything, and lots of other stuff also discussed in here. So make sure you guys check that out. I'll leave the timestamps below, so no worries. And thanks so much, guys, for listening. I'll see you guys in the next podcast. So thank you so much, Mr. Carson, for coming on to that.
Hey, glad to be here. But guys and gals, if you're listening to this, go do Jeffrey a favor. Go over and hit the subscribe button and leave him a 5-star review. He's doing a great job.
Wow.
And we as podcasters love getting reviews from our listeners. Good or bad, we just want to hear feedback. And if you could do that, if you've spent the last 30 minutes or listened who's been binging his shows, take the 5 minutes to do that for Jeffrey. He would really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Scott. And guys, you heard him, so make sure you do that as well. Thank you so much, guys.